It is the middle of the afternoon, and the sky has gone black, not cloudy, not overcast. Black, the kind of dark that should not exist at 3 in the afternoon. You are standing on a low rise of ground just outside the walls of Jerusalem, and for 3 hours now, the sun has been swallowed whole. The crowd around you has stopped shouting. Mothers hold their children closer. A Roman soldier shifts his weight and looks up, and even he, a man paid to watch other men die, looks afraid. On a rough wooden cross in front of you, a man is dying. And in a few moments, at a very specific hour, he will speak one word that changes everything. Then, half a mile away, inside the temple, something will happen to a curtain. A curtain taller than a house, woven by hand, thick as a man's palm. We will come back to that curtain. But not yet. First, you need to know what hour it is. Because the gospel writers did not have to tell you the time. They tell you almost nothing about the clock anywhere else. But here, at the death of Jesus, 3 of them stop and mark the exact hour. Matthew marks it, Mark marks it, Luke marks it, and the hour they all name is the same, the 9th hour. Now, here's the thing most people walk right past. For a long time, readers of the Bible have noticed something strange about that number. 9 keeps showing up at the edge of endings. It sits at the last warning before judgment falls. It sits at the collapse of a kingdom. And it sits here, at the exact moment the Son of God stops breathing. Not everyone agrees on what that means, and honest people have debated it for centuries. But the pattern is worth stopping for. So let's stop. This is not a story about a lucky number. This is not a story about a secret code hidden in the text. This is not a story about superstition, about seeing a number on a clock and thinking God is sending you a message through your microwave. This is a story about the hour when the most important thing in human history was finished, completed, paid in full. Because that is what 9 has always pointed to, all through Scripture. Not magic, an ending. The last note of a song. The final page of a chapter that has to close before the next one can open. And on a hill outside Jerusalem at the 9th hour, under a black sky, the longest chapter of all was about to reach its final word. Stay with me. Because before we get to that word, before we get to the man on the cross, you need to see where else this number has stood. You need to see what happened in Egypt. You need to see what happened to a forgotten king in a city called Samaria. And then you'll understand why the hour Jesus died was not an accident of the clock. It was the point of the whole thing. Go back with me about 1,500 years before that black afternoon. Go to Egypt. A nation is under judgment. Plague after plague has fallen on the most powerful empire on earth. Water turned to blood, frogs, gnats, flies, disease on the livestock, boils, hail, locusts. 8 warnings, 8 chances to relent, and Pharaoh will not bend. So God sends the 9th. The 9th plague is darkness, not a normal night. Exodus says it was a darkness that could be felt. 3 days of it, so thick that no one could see another person, so heavy that no one could even rise from where they sat. And here is what you have to understand about that 9th plague. It was the last one before the end. After the darkness came the death of the firstborn, and after that, Egypt let God's people go. The 9th plague was the final warning, the last held breath before everything changed. Now hold that picture in your mind. Darkness the 9th, the moment right before the end, because you are going to see it again. Fast forward. Move ahead through the centuries to a kingdom that is running out of time. The northern kingdom of Israel has had king after king who did what was evil, and God has been patient for generations, sending prophet after prophet, warning after warning. And now there is a king named Hoshea, son of Elah. He is the last one. There will be no king after him. The book of 2 Kings records it in one quiet, devastating sentence. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and carried Israel away. The 9th year. That was the year the kingdom ended. Not the 1st year, not the 5th. The 9th. After a long, long season of mercy that the people kept refusing, the ending fell on the 9th. Here's what most people miss. In the Hebrew alphabet, every letter also carries a number. And the 9th letter is a small one called Tet, written like a little basket or a curled shell. The very first time that letter appears in the whole Bible is in Genesis, in the 1st chapter, in the word Tov, The word God speaks over creation. And God saw that it was good. Good. The ninth letter opens the word for good, which tells you something important before we go any further. 9, in the world of Scripture, was never only about doom. It was about something being brought to completion, finished, made whole. And sometimes what has to be finished is a warning. And sometimes, as you will see, what has to be finished is a rescue. But it gets stranger, because the number that sat at the edge of Egypt's judgment, the number that sat at the fall of a kingdom, is the same number the gospel writers reach for when they describe the death of the one person in history who had done nothing wrong at all. 2 endings you have just seen were about people who deserved judgment. Pharaoh earned his darkness, Samaria earned its fall. But the third ending, the one waiting for us back on that hill, is different, because the man dying at the 9th hour had earned nothing. He was innocent, and the darkness that came for him at noon was not his judgment, it was ours. Now watch what happens next. Before we walk up that hill together, and we are about to, let me ask you to do one small thing. If you are still with me this far in, you are the kind of person who wants to understand Scripture, not just skim it. So if this is speaking to you, take a second and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel reach other people who are hungry for the same thing. And leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. I read them. Now, you have seen the number stand at the edge of 2 endings, a plague, a kingdom, both deserved. But the 9th hour on that hill outside Jerusalem is going to break the pattern wide open, because this time, the one at the center of it did not deserve the darkness at all. So let's go to the cross. And let's start with the clock. It is 9 in the morning, the 3rd hour. Mark is the one who gives you that detail. It was the 3rd hour, he writes, when they crucified him. So picture it. The nails have just gone in. The sun is climbing. And a healthy crowd is gathered to watch, the way crowds always gather when Rome puts a man on a cross by the side of a public road, because that was the point of crucifixion. It was not just an execution, it was a message. Rome wanted everyone who walked that road to see what happened to those who defied the empire. We are not guessing about any of this, by the way. This is not a story the church invented in a back room centuries later. The Roman historian Tacitus, no friend of Christians, wrote it down in his annals. He records that Christus was put to death by the governor Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius. The Jewish historian Josephus confirms the same men in the same offices, Pilate as prefect, Caiaphas as high priest. 2 writers with no reason to help the Christian case, and they hand you the frame of the whole scene. A real man, a real governor, a real death at a real hour on a real Friday. So the 3rd hour comes, 9 in the morning. He is crucified, and then the 6th hour comes. Noon. The sun should be at its highest, its most blinding point of the entire day. And instead, the light goes out. Matthew says it plainly. From the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. 3 hours, from noon until 3. At the exact moment the day should have been brightest, the world went dark. People have tried for 2,000 years to explain that darkness away, and here is what is remarkable. Even the earliest critics could not do it. Some said it must have been an eclipse, but an early Christian teacher named Origen pointed out, almost 200 years later, that it could not have been an eclipse because Jesus died at Passover, and Passover always falls at the full moon, and a solar eclipse is physically impossible at the full moon. The one natural explanation people reached for was the one explanation that could not work. So the darkness stayed. Noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 hours of a black sky over a dying man and a crowd that had come to jeer, slowly falling silent. And here is where the stakes climb past anything we have seen. Because in Egypt, the darkness was a warning to a guilty nation. At Samaria, the ending fell on a guilty kingdom. But on this hill, the darkness is falling over a man the Roman officer standing guard will himself call innocent. This is not the judgment of a guilty king. This is something the human mind can barely hold, the judgment that belonged to everyone else, landing on the one person who had never earned a single hour of it. Pay attention to what he says in that darkness. Somewhere around the 9th hour, out of that blackness, Jesus cries out in Aramaic, the everyday language of a carpenter's town. Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? And people have argued about that cry for centuries. Was it despair? Was it the weight of the whole world's wrong pressing down at once? But listen to the words themselves. They are not random. They are the opening line of an ancient song, the 22nd Psalm, a song that begins in that exact abandonment and ends hundreds of years before this moment, describing a man with pierced hands and a crowd gambling for his clothing, and then closes with a strange, blazing hope that people not yet born will hear what God has done. He is not just crying out in pain. From the cross, in the dark, he is pointing you to a song that already knew how this ends. But the song is not finished yet, and neither is he. There is one more word coming. One word in the original language that the whole Bible has been leaning toward from the very first page. And it arrives at the 9th hour. The 9th hour, 3 in the afternoon, the end of the darkness. And John, who stood close enough to hear, records the word. Jesus does not whisper it. He is a man who has been beaten, who is hung on nails for 6 hours, whose lungs are failing. And yet John says, he cried it out with a loud voice, the shout of a man finishing a race, not a man losing one. One word in Greek, Tetelestai. Now, you need to know what that word actually meant to the people who first heard it, because in English we soften it to 3 little words. It is finished, and we lose almost everything. Tetelestai was not a sigh. It was not, well, I'm done for. It was a word people used in the marketplace. When a debt was paid in full, the merchant would take the bill and write one word across it, Tetelestai, paid, settled, nothing left owing. It was the word a servant used when a task was completed exactly as the master asked. It was the word for a job brought all the way to its finish, with nothing left undone. So hear it again with the weight it actually carried. On a hill, in the dark, at the 9th hour, the hour that all through Scripture had meant the end, the completion, the final note, the Son of God looks at everything he came to do, everything the whole story had been driving toward since the very beginning, and he does not say, I am finished. He says it is finished, the debt, the rescue, the whole thing, paid in full. And then he says one more line, the one Luke gives you. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And he is gone. Now, the curtain. I told you we would come back to it. Inside the temple there hung a veil, an enormous curtain separating the innermost room, the Holy of Holies, the one place on earth where the presence of God was said to dwell. According to Jewish tradition, it was massive, thick, woven by hand, tall as the wall of a great building. And the whole point of that curtain was to keep people out. Behind it was holiness no ordinary person could approach. For century after century, that curtain said the same thing to everyone who saw it. Not yet. Not you. Stay back. Matthew tells you what happened to it at the moment Jesus died. The curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom, from top to bottom. Read that again. Not from the bottom up, the way a man would tear it, reaching as high as his hands could grab. From the top down, from above, as if 2 hands came from the height of heaven and split it open like cloth. The barrier that had said stay back for 1,000 years was ripped apart at the exact second the debt was marked paid, and it was torn from the top because no human being tore it. The way in was not forced open from our side, it was thrown open from his. And this is the moment the number finally makes sense. Every ending you have watched, Egypt, Samaria, all of it, was pointing here. 9 was never the number of the slammed door. It was the number of the finished thing, the last warning that gives way to rescue. The final page of the old chapter, torn from top to bottom so a new one could begin. Watch who understands it first, not a priest, not a scholar, a Roman soldier, a foreigner, a career executioner, a man who had almost certainly nailed others to crosses and felt nothing. Mark says this centurion was standing right there facing him, and when he saw how Jesus died, he said, truly, this man was the Son of God. The first human being to confess it after the debt was paid was an outsider who had no business being let in. And that is the whole point of the torn curtain. The way in is now open to exactly the kind of person everyone assumed was locked out. Maybe that is you. Maybe you know what it is to stand at an ending that felt final. a door that closed, a word from a doctor, a marriage that ended, a name on a stone, a season of your life you would give anything to have back. You know that specific silence, the one that falls when something is simply over and there is nothing left to do. That is the silence that fell on that hill at the 9th hour. But here is what the 9th hour teaches you. In the hands of God, an ending is not the last word. It is the seam where the next thing begins. The curtain did not just tear, it opened. The tomb 3 days later did not just empty, it opened. And the word he shouted was not the word of a man giving up. It was the word of a man who had finished, so that you could begin. So, let me leave you with 3 things to carry out of this. First, the fact. Jesus did not die at a random moment. He died at the 9th hour, the hour that all through Scripture had marked the end of a thing, the completion of it, the finish. The timing was not an accident of the sun, it was the signature at the bottom of the page. Second, what it means for you. That word he shouted, Tetelestai, was the word for a debt paid in full, which means the account is not still open. You are not standing in front of a bill you have to keep paying down for the rest of your life, hoping you can cover it. It was covered, fully, at the 9th hour. There is nothing left for you to add to it. And third, and this is the one I want you to hold on to. Whatever ending you are standing in right now, the thing that feels finished, closed, over, remember how the curtain tore. From the top, from above, by a hand that was not yours. In the hands of God, the ending is never the end. It is the doorway. The finished thing is where the new thing starts. He said it is finished, and that was not the sound of a door closing on you. That was the sound of one opening. So let me ask you this, and I really do want to hear it. Which ending in your own life do you most need to see as a beginning? Tell me in the comments. I read every one, and there are people in that comment section who need to hear what you have walked through. If this gave you something, share it with one person who is sitting in a hard ending right now. And subscribe, so the next time we open the book together, you are here for it. The sky went black at noon, the debt was marked paid at 3, and the curtain tore from the top down, so that the way home would be open. For the soldier, for the outsider, for you.